So yeah, it's nice to meet everyone. I'm not a technical person. I'm a nonprofit person. I've worked at and run a number of nonprofit organizations. That's been most of my career. And a couple of years ago, I moved over into consulting and coaching and teaching. So that's what I do now. Entirely focused on the nonprofit world, little tiny bit of work with mission-driven startups that are for profit, but mostly the nonprofit world. And I have for a long time, I use a whole sort of library of resources that I've built over the years for my own work and for my business, working with nonprofits. And I have wondered for a long time how to share that information with organizations. And, the idea of like just kind of throwing everything up on a website and making it available to the world is not that appealing, because like, who's really going to read through all that stuff? And so when AI and ChatGPT and all of these new tools became available, I started playing around with them and thinking, this would be a really great way to share information with people, to make my library available and have people be able to kind of interact with it. And so I started to try to build something. And as a non-technical person, like got myself into trouble really quickly, like got in a loop, that I couldn't get out of. So I started to look around for tools that would allow me to do that. And I found a couple, most of which were not that usable, not that they didn't sort of do everything I wanted them to do. And I found CustomGPT, which as I understand it, was built for people really to access their own materials, right? So you would have some archive of information. It might be employee handbooks, it might be documents that you use in your work. And it would be a way to sort of have AI trained on that material, and then you would be able to interact with it. And so I decided to try to build this off of that tool, but have it be public facing. And it's free. And so basically what I started by doing is I uploaded all of my, not all, but a large number of PDFs, and started to sort of train have this tool train the AI on that information. And I started to use the tool and test it. What was interesting, I learned a lot by doing this, by the way. If there are any other noobs out there, just throwing something like this up is like such a great way to learn how to use it. So what I learned is that it was not enough information for the chatbot to like get smart. There were just so many holes in its knowledge that it was really hard for it to respond to something that wasn't like really specifically in the document. So then I picked about 5 or 6 of like the top really best websites of organizations that serve nonprofit organizations. So for those of you, you'll recognize these names: Bridgespan and BoardSource and SSIR and some of these kind of really, really high quality resources. And I put in their sitemaps, I added that. And all of a sudden the chat got much better. And as I've been using it, and I want to say, it's publicly available, but like hordes of people aren't using it yet. But people I know, my network is in there playing around in it. It's getting smart and it's getting better every day. And what I like about the tool and what was important to me is that for me in the work that, it's nonprofitama.com, nonprofit ask me anything. What I like about, so what I don't like about ChatGPT is, and I use it and I enjoy using it, but what I don't like about it is that it creates a huge amount of work for me, right? So I put in a prompt, it spits out a response, and then because I'm all about sort of the reliability of information, the evidence base, I then have to go and do all of this research to confirm the information that it gave to me. And of course, what do I find? Like, it's a load of crap, right? So there's some really good stuff in there, and there's just like junk, and there's made up stuff, and it's not accurate, and I don't know its sources, right? Like, that's not publicly available. We don't know what these things were trained on. what I like about CustomGPT, and I think really its best feature, is that it will actually give you the source. So if you go to nonprofitama.com, you put in your prompt, you get a response, and I can give you some sample prompts of like what people in nonprofit world might ask it. And then it says, where did this answer come from? And you click it and it gives you the link. So it's either a link from one of these sitemaps that I put in, or it actually takes you directly to the PDF that I uploaded, and you can download that. And that to me is gold.
Elizabeth, excuse me for interrupting. You mind showing it? You want to walk through an example for the team?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I should share my screen?
Please, yeah. We can see it.
Great. Okay, so the whole thing doesn't fit. Let me see if I do this. Can you see the whole thing?
We can, yes.
Okay. So the beginning just explains that, and just to get on my quickly on a soapbox here, like I think the future of all of this stuff is not just these, like just ChatGPT as it is. I really think the future of AI is in the curation and the expertise that goes into training these things. And I think in transparency, because creativity is fun, but it's for a lot of people, for me, it's sort of intolerable. There's a little bit too much creativity. So anyway, so I kind of explained that what I did is I really put in these resources. Having said that, it is getting more creative, and it is starting to put together, like I have warned people that it's really important to actually look at the linked sources and make sure that you understand what you got and that it is really representing the answer it gave you.
Elizabeth, we have one question on how did you get the PDFs in there? Is it you just go to a file and
Yeah,
upload?
so the way CustomGPT, and again, I'm like, I feel a little funny because the CEO, the creator of this tool is actually on this call. So I hope he'll jump in if I get it wrong. But so the answer is, I don't know the magic that goes on behind the scenes, but it's an extremely easy to use tool. I'm hoping maybe I'll get like a discount or a couple of free months or something, because I'm just going to talk it up now. But it's a really, really great, easy to use tool. It has a menu, you know, where you go in your settings. And
are you able to show that now?
Sorry?
Could you show that now, the menu?
Let me see. Yeah,
this is a very literal crowd. And while she's doing that, everyone keep your questions coming, or hold on to them, and we'll open up the Q&A here in 5 minutes or so.
All right, so these are my project settings. Again, I hope Alden is okay with me showing this. I guess he'll...
Absolutely. You're doing a much better job than I could.
Elizabeth, send him an invoice.
Can I get some free? I should get an invoice, or just like some free months. Yeah. Okay.
Just send me the invoice.
Okay, so there's a tab here for putting in your data, and you can either add a sitemap here, and then you can manage the sitemaps. So you see the ones that I've put in, Council of Nonprofit Organizations, those kinds of things. And then there's an upload area where you can drop in, I'm going to get another free month for this. You can put in anything. So I happen to have put in PDFs, but this Alden has built this tool where you can put in like any format. And I think I saw an email that said you can like put in videos and it'll transcribe them. I mean, it's really actually like very impressive. So what I did was I put in PDFs, and if you go to manage files, you can see I have, you know, tons of, let's see how many pages of files here. Oh, it doesn't do it that way. Anyway, tons and tons and tons of sources, you know, that I use. And if somebody gets a response using one of these sources, it will give them the link and they can go right to it. Having said that, with like the hundreds and hundreds of documents that I put in, as I mentioned before, it was not enough for the for the sort of universe of people asking kind of broad questions about nonprofit organizations, the sitemaps really are what kind of brought this thing to life. And the other thing I can show you, let me see, is, so I actually think I like way exceeded whatever I was supposed to put in here. I don't exactly know how that, as I said, I'm a non-technical person. So after this call, I'm hoping Alden will give me like some kind of all access pass, because all these things say limited now. So I think I like way over did what I was supposed to do. But what you can see is between the PDFs and the sitemaps, everything I put in, there's like 196 pages of sources here. So if you compare it to ChatGPT, it's like a teeny tiny universe of information. So that's the negative of using something like nonprofit AMA. The trade-off here, the positive, is that you can rely on the responses it gives you because it's only pulling from this information. So for me, the trade-off is worth it. And once I get all my free stuff from Alden, I can put more stuff in it and it'll get even smarter.
Elizabeth, this is great. Do you mind doing a search or two that you would think would be common?
Yeah, so I threw a couple in because I didn't know how fast my computer would be.
Oh.
So I kind of pre-populated a little. So I put in, how do I start a new nonprofit organization? Not like the best use of a tool like this, because you could just Google that. But again, it gave, a really nice little summary. And then it gave you, where did this answer come from? And so you can scroll through and, actually click any one of these and it just pulls the source right up. Then I did something that I think is a little bit more the kind of thing you might see. And I asked, is it better to start a new nonprofit organization or to use a fiscal sponsor? What are the pros and cons of each? So that's where it gets to be a little bit more creative. And then it gave me a really nice answer that is correct. Again, this is what I'm interested in. It's like, should people rely on this information? So it gave me pros and cons of starting a new nonprofit. And then it gave me pros and cons of using a fiscal sponsor. And then it gave me sources.
Have you seen it hallucinate?
So here's what it looks like when you go to a PDF that I've uploaded, and it's, you can just take that now. Did you have a question, Paul?
Yeah, Elizabeth, have you seen it hallucinate or give wildly incorrect answers?
No. So the only thing it has done for me or for any of so I've been asking people for feedback. So obviously I don't know if it's done it for somebody else, but except for the people who've told me. There was one person who gave me a report of it wasn't that it was wildly inaccurate, and it wasn't that it was hallucinating. Not that I really know what that means, but I'll tell you what it did. Because I put the sitemaps in, which I really didn't want to do for this exact reason. Sometimes when you're in a sitemap and you're on a web page of a resource, it might be promoting another resource. So this person asked a question about DEI, this one of the sources that it pulled, and its response was correct. It gave a really nice response. It gave the sources, but one of the sources that it linked to was not at all about DEI, but at the bottom of that web page, it was like, if you like this article, you'll like this other article, which happens to be about DEI. And so it actually pulled that in. And I immediately SOS'd Paul Byer and was like, oh no, it did this thing. And Paul said something really helpful to me, which was like, so what? Right? Because so what? So you click through, you see that it isn't really the right resource. It happens to have a link to another resource that would be good. So like, who cares? So it gave me, I would say that's the one thing I've seen so far that I didn't like. But I think that's a small price to pay. And that's when I added this little thing that says, please take time to look at the linked sources.
Elizabeth, we got a couple questions come in. Do you know if it's, or I'll maybe know, is it 3.5 or 4 that's using in the back under the covers?
It's only 4. We do not even support 3.5.
Okay, so I thought. And then another question.
Oh, I did something else that's really cool.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna be able to put it up on the screen because I won't be able to pull it up quickly enough. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm Elizabeth Planet on LinkedIn. I put up on there, I gave it a query a prompt, and I ran it in Google Bard, ChatGPT, and my nonprofit AMA. And I showed people I put a little chart in and I showed it to people. What I did was I asked it to write, it was actually, I should have had that available for this, but go to LinkedIn, go to Elizabeth Planet on LinkedIn and you'll see it. I asked it to write a fundraising letter. And this actually is a thing that people like to use this kind of thing for in the nonprofit world. So I asked it to write a letter, asking for donations, and I put it into each of those three. And I shared it on LinkedIn because this tool, Nonprofit AMA, did so much better. So what Google Bard did was it was so high level, it was like not that useful, which frankly is my feedback about Google Bard generally, right? It was like kind of like the haiku of ChatGPT. It was like short and not that, detailed and not that great. ChatGPT gave an extremely long letter, but it was like so long and filled with so much crap that it was unusable. And Nonprofit AMA wrote a lovely little fundraising letter that kind of had all the elements. So I thought that was a really good example, and I encourage you to go look at that on my LinkedIn.
Right. Elizabeth, I posted your LinkedIn to the chat, so everyone take a look at that. So let's go to questions. So Bob, you got your hand? Bob, go ahead. And others raise your hand in Zoom. And Mike will
Yes,
go.
Elizabeth, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Paul sent out your link last night, so I decided to play around with it a little bit. And kind of a couple questions. I don't know whether this is for yourself or Alden, but I had done a fair number of nonprofits, kind of a retired tech guy for a while there, and I searched for them and couldn't find them. So then I went to ChatGPT. Of course, it listed them as 501c3 and so forth. And I had known because our business school, Paul and I went to the same business school, they had to do a thorough review of the applicant in order to do so. So kind of a two-part question. One is the lack of finding these nonprofits on your website due to the fact that it's not populated fully enough, in other words, the sources, or is it, and this might be a question for Alden, I don't know what you're doing there in the background, whether you're taking everything and vectorizing it and doing a full search. Is it possible that it has been ingested, but the model hasn't been fully trained yet?
I think this is certainly initially a question for me. It is not populated with that kind of information. So Alden's tool gets expensive quickly if you start to want to put the universe in there. So I didn't set it up with that kind of data. I didn't set it up with it isn't like a fact finder. It's more like a sort of, the user I'm picturing is somebody at a nonprofit who's what I'm really picturing is the smaller nonprofit. So the ED or somebody like that who's wearing all the hats and has to be like an expert on a lot of different things. But what I did not set it up for is specific data about specific facts. It's more about kind of the universe of knowledge that ED might need to draw from. So I don't have that kind of thing in there. There's no database of organizations in there. Now I could have it more comprehensive, but I would have to have much, much more data in there.
And it feels like, Elizabeth, if I'm hearing correctly, it's almost like Ask Elizabeth online.
Thank you. That's
trust.
Yeah. It's the kind of questions that I get from my clients. Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Great.
And looks like it's doing exactly as designed. The job of the tool is to answer from your content and only from your content.
That's great. Go ahead now, Mike. Or says Dan Slavin. Mike Melville, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. This is for Alden. Alden, you created this specifically for nonprofits, this AI, correct?
No, I created it specifically for people who want ChatGPT with their data.
So
who
gave you the data?
Whoever is using my tool insurance
Okay.
companies, doctors, lawyers, whoever, wherever the definition of business content and data is.
So
That
you'll
is,
get a company that will pay you to create an AI using their data. Is that correct?
that is correct. That is what the tool does. It creates ChatGPT
Yeah.
with your specific data. And it can be anything you want. It can be your website, it can be your resume and those little PDF files you have.
Mhm.
It can be, I'm just debugging a problem. Somebody has uploaded their entire podcast library.
And then do you charge what's the business model? Do you charge the company that wants the specific data
No,
to make it?
I charge the company for this service. So
Okay.
companies will create a bot, just like how you remember Google as a search engine.
Yep.
This is now a chatbot, and the chatbot is ingested with data. You send data to the chatbot, and then the chatbot responds based on that data.
And does the company supply you with the data, or do you go out and find the data yourself based on what the company needs?
The company supplies it, or they point us to the data if it is public data. For
Okay.
example, the way Elizabeth added those sitemaps, which by the way was a ninja move, right?
Mhm.
She pointed the sitemaps, our system went, pulled all the public data from the sitemaps, and then her bot became that much smarter in answering the questions.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. That's
Sure.
indeed.
Good questions.
Elizabeth,
For
there's
what it's worth,
Yeah.
just because I'm such a like nonprofit nerd. This is not an advertisement for CustomGPT. Like Alden and I don't actually know each other. I just ask him questions, because like he's available on his website. But I just wanted to make something free. Like I have no commercial interest. I have no profit motive. I do link to my personal website here for people to I do like getting clients, but the tool itself that I built is free. And that's what I'm interested in is I would like to see people, in the nonprofit world, having access to good information without having to pay me always, to consult. Do I think it'll lead to new business for me? Sure, that would be great, but it is definitely different from probably most of the use cases, that CustomGPT is
There's a
getting.
few other questions online. One of it is how do you think about copyright? Are some of the data you uploaded copyright to other people or?
So everything, first of all, I'm not charging. So, everything that I've put up there is either under Creative Commons license or, is on one of these free websites. Now, having said that, there's a big, gaping caveat here, which is that once you put up these sitemaps, I'm not a technical person. I have no idea what happens on the back end. Like if there's content in there in the sitemap that would otherwise not be available to the public, does GPT-4 just magically make it available? Maybe it does.
No, it can't.
No idea.
Yeah. If it's not available to the public, it's not available to us.
Yeah, so everything is available to the public. There's another caveat. I probably shouldn't say this on a recorded line, but it occurs to me that some of the PDFs, that I've collected over the years, did I have to log in to get access to some of them? Probably. So there are probably things in my library that technically I've never paid for anything like that. That's not the universe, that I work in, but so none of them are things I bought, but I probably, quote unquote, bought them, some of them with my email address. And so a user who would use my tool might be sidestepping that. So that might be, I don't know if that's an issue, but these are publicly available materials. And that you could otherwise just get off the internet. I'm just making the access to them easier.
You're curious, and also think fair use might cover some of this because it is a nonprofit. Are there other questions for Elizabeth? Before we wrap up and we'll go to open.
I do have a request for the group, which is, I just threw this thing up there. I've been playing with it. Like I said, I have my friends and colleagues playing with it, but I would really love it if you guys would either play with it, or if you, I mean, I'm sure you all know and love various nonprofit organizations in your lives. You may be on boards, you may have friends, you know, who work at them. Encourage them to use it, because I really, really want it to get smarter, and I really want to get the feedback.
How should they give you feedback? What's the best? Is there a link on their website?
Yeah,
or-
so if you, here, I'll share again. So you go in, you ask it your question, you get your response, and then down here I have a little questions, comments thing. And it gives you, you can rate the tool. You don't even have to give me your name, like nothing on this form is required. You could just put in a thing and be like, it sucks, or it's great, or, you know, but what I'm hoping people will do, and of course, nobody's done this yet, but what I'm hoping they'll do, except that there was one person who did it, is that they'll actually write in like what their experience was and give me some feedback. I have gotten feedback on LinkedIn. That's primarily where I've been getting feedback, and then from friends who've just been telling me, you know, what they think.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, the biggest feedback is the conversation history that you'll see very soon, because the users will give you feedback right there in the conversation, like, wow, this is awesome, thank you very much, or like, this sucks, and you're terrible, and all of that. And you'll be able to download it, pop it into ChatGPT, and get your, that's the real goldmine of information.
Yeah, so that's, I don't have access to that feature yet, but when I do, that'll be really, really amazing.
Exactly. That'll tell you what you're missing from your
That's a
chatbot.
very interesting use thing here. So as I'm in a chat, if I get emotionally frustrated, I just start, I'm not even looking for
Exactly.
the comment thing. I'm just telling it right there.
Yeah. And I think I had covered a use case in the past where we put this up on our website and people were asking all sorts of questions. And after about less than 10 days, I was quickly able to see what questions were not being answered. And I was quickly able to put an FAQ section for all of those questions.